Hello, one and all from painted faces and hot clowns in the bottom corner. It's a Halloween special of Devil's Advocate, where we're just going to get into some football from Devil's Advocate podcast. As you can see, there's 5 of us. I'm not normal, just saying. But we're in for a good show. So it's Man United versus Newcastle. It's only going to go one way, isn't it? It's going to be a Man United win, but we'll find out. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But joining me tonight, obviously, is Jonathan, Daz, Pete below me, and Julio. Chaps, how are we doing? How are we doing tonight?
All good, Reece.
Good.
All good, Reece. Yep. All good.
Yeah, good.
Looking forward to the game.
Oh, absolutely. Especially after you had your cup final opportunity last year and blew it.
We got a bit of payback, though.
You got a very big amount of payback, to be fair. You had the right response, so we'll see how that goes. Just before you even get into that, obviously, just want to ask about overall your season so far. Coming to you first, Daz, obviously, when you look at your season so far, and obviously expectation wise, what was your expectations coming into the season, and also when you consider the injuries you've had as well, loss of key players. One player in particular who we'll touch on later on for different reasons you've lost. Has your expectations still changed, or are they still the same? Just from your season in general.
I suppose I started the season with expectations of finishing between 5th and 3rd. But yeah, it's been a bit up and down, stop-starty. I suppose the highlight has been the win against PSG in the Champions League, when we weren't expecting that. But yeah, injuries, and yeah, you're going to touch on the Tonali situation, which is kind of hampered our plans, and I suppose our transfers as well have been kind of more future looking than anything else. And with Harvey Barnes also injured until the start of the next season, everyone we brought in is unavailable to us, or hasn't been starting. So yeah, it's been mixed.
And when you look at your team in general, obviously, loss of Tonali, obviously that's a big one. I'll be asking you guys exclusively. Don't worry, Julio, Jonathan, you'll get something else later on, but you will be excluded from that conversation. But in general, when you look at your team, though, you are playing very well under Eddie Howe. You're very well organised defensively. You're one of the best defences in the league. Numbers-wise, for goals as well, you're way up there as well. When you look at your performances in general, you are almost 2 years or so into this project, something like that. He's been there for quite a while now, but when you actually look at it in general, do you think he's on track, or do you think he's overachieved a little bit, or are you just happy how things are, just in general?
Oh, totally overachieved. From where he started, I think we were 19th when he took over. We touched 20th the spot then, and then brought in a few players there. There weren't massive names, let's say, but the right players with the right attitude to keep us in the league. Then the next season, qualifying for the Champions League. How could you not be happy with that? From where we were under Mike Ashley to where we are now. In mixing it up, not there yet, and as you said, it is a project, and we're expecting it to take a number of years. So it has escalated really quickly. So it's great. So everything is a bonus for us at this stage. And even last year, Dara mentioned it, getting to the cup final as well, and you have a say in that, and us not turning up on the day. Nick Pope getting the red card, and Bruno being missing for he was banned as well, so it wasn't the ideal prep. And again, today we're going into our game tomorrow. I'm not making excuses, because I think we can take you tomorrow, but we have an awful lot of injuries. I know you some injuries as well, but injuries to key players as well, so that will play a big factor. But we'll battle on.
Absolutely, and I'll be coming to you about that later on, about injuries. But obviously, Pete, it's good to see you. Obviously, I've watched your show a few times. You're a good laugh. Similar to what I've asked there from Daz and all that, your team's expectations, obviously injuries, loss of Tonali, that big factor. First of all, obviously Daz has admitted himself, the over expectation, overachieving. What's your perspective on Newcastle since Eddie Howe and obviously take over? What's your general thoughts on that? And just, is there maybe what do you think is the end goal? Because obviously Newcastle fans will probably say they want to win the Premier League, and totally understandable. But is there anything else that you think that you would like to see happen, like within the club? Like,
well, I'll start with that part first. The end goal for the club is to win the Champions League. It's not just to win the Premier League.
Yeah,
And that's what the owners set out when they first took over the club. Is that they want to be number one. They want to be the best team in Europe, and that's ultimately where they want to get to. Now, it's going to take time. It's going to take longer than Chelsea, longer than Man City, and the reason being is because of FFP. They're two factors that neither of those clubs had to worry about, and we're doing that. And to be fair, we've made that progression earlier than expected. So within our first full season to get Champions League football under Eddie Howe was something we never ever expected to happen. But the football we played deserved it, and we're in a great position now. What that does for me, in my opinion, it means that we can take this project on even further. And look, it's all right having a good team. It's all right having a good season, but you've got to be able to sustain it. And you guys know more than anybody. You were able to sustain it under Sir Alex Ferguson for decades, and you used those trophy wins and the financial gain off the back of that to sign some of England's best players, some of Europe's best players, and then to sustain it that way. What we need to do is exactly that. It's all right as loving this Champions League season, and we are,
of course.
But there's an element where we need to take that further, and we need to back it up again. Getting European football again is the next step. Then being able to financially compete alongside yourselves, alongside the likes of Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea, not just by spending, but it's the money generated. And you guys are the best at that. You generate more money than any other club. I think Man City are quite close to you guys now with regards to that. But we need to get there. And once we get in and around that period, whenever that is, in the next year, 2, 3, whatever, that's when we can really kind of stamp our authority down. And it's exciting because going back to Mike Ashley 3 years ago, watching the horrid football that we were watching under the worst manager that we've probably ever had in your Premier League winning captain, Steve Bruce.
That was us just doing you one favour, like that's for the entertainers of 95, 96. We're just giving you something of here's a dull reminder of what you actually need.
We're entertaining through that. I'll tell you that.
That's for sure.
Not entertaining at all. But going from that to this, it's like night and day. And it is incredibly enjoyable to watch Newcastle United play football at the moment, and exciting. We're excited every weekend. We're excited every midweek there's a game, and that's something that we've not had for a hell of a long time.
There's something I wanted to bring up as well, funnily enough, because you mentioned about the Champions League, and when you look at it in the retrospect, just being respectful, I gave you zero chance of getting out of that group. Not because I disliked Newcastle or anything like that. When you look at the actual group itself, you've got three teams that are like European heavyweights. 2 of them have actually been Champions League winners. One of them, the most successful of the entire group in Milan, who are at times inconsistent in Europe, but they've got like yourselves, an amazing home crowd. We saw that in Milan. That even though it was a 0-0 draw, when you look at it on paper, I've spoken to a few Newcastle fans who were like honest to me, saying they should have got battered. Like let's be real, you shouldn't have escaped Italy with a draw. But that just shows the incredible level of defence in your team, that you were withstanding that level of performance and still getting out with a much needed draw. You then play PSG. That, I have to admit, that was the shock result of the Champions League so far. Because I don't think many people would have thought you guys to absolutely smash them. Considering the fact that it's PSG with a Champions League winning manager as well, you would think maybe a narrow defeat here, maybe for Newcastle, considering the way they play. They're a very well organised side. It might take maybe 1 or 2 goals from Mbappe. Where was Mbappe all day? Didn't see him. He's completely ruined PSG. And now you've got the 2 games against Dortmund to come. Again, they're no slouches. Oh wait, so you lost the last game, didn't you? Yeah. you still got the second game to come, but that just shows like performance-wise, you're still able to compete with these sides. And if you can take that to the next level, who knows? Like, I'm not going to say you're going to get the quarterfinals, but you just could reasonably get the quarterfinals. The way you are playing as well, it's impressive. And if you do end up winning the Premier League with Eddie Howe as well, especially for him as well, be the first English manager to do it as well, because no English managers won the Premier League, which like they just don't know how to seem to do it. It might just be resource or choice of club, but they just can't do it. Just do another thing like of the level. So that's another thing I can see what you guys are looking forward to, and it's reflected in the crowd tendencies every week. That's another thing, and I think that's something that needs to be commended on. So I'll give you that, and then hopefully you lose this week. Jonathan, I just want to ask, obviously, now to the opposite side of the stick. Thoughts on our season, mate, including injuries? Just where are you at mentally, mate? I just got to ask.
But United at the minute.
Yep. Yeah, sorry, it's my internet connection. Sorry, it's shit. Like your defense. I apologize.
Yeah, mate. It's just I was on the review last week after the Copenhagen game, and despite the 3 points, I was saying to the boys, it's just been a roller coaster of a season, and that game just epitomised the last minute penalty save. It's just really crazy looking at the downfall this season. But when you look at how well we did last season under Ten Hag, I mean, it ironically enough, it probably culminated with that victory over Newcastle in the Carabao Cup final, because our form really nosedived in the months afterwards. I know we still got Champions League, we finished the top 3, which was probably exceeded expectations, really. Most Man United fans' expectations last season, considering the job that Ten Hag had on his hands when he came in. But the form has been on a worrying nosedive since that Carabao Cup final, and we just about got over the line. Liverpool had a lot of momentum in the tail end of that season, as they always do. They finish seasons unbelievably well, and we just about pipped into that Champions League spot. And when you look at our form and our performances this season, you're kind of asking the question, did Liverpool really deserve to get that top 4 spot ahead of us? And on the balance of things, they probably did, because we're a team that just don't have the quality at the minute to compete in that competition. And when you look at the contrast in the two clubs, Newcastle and Man United, even the Champions League this season, I was looking at that Newcastle game, what they were doing to PSG. It's everything we dreamed that we were going to be under Ten Hag when he came in from Ajax, playing this absolute swashbuckling football, attacking sharpness, defensive solidity, transitions, everyone working as a unit. But it's just been the polar opposite this season. It's so many people who aren't fans of football have asked me as a United fan, what's gone wrong at United at the minute? I actually don't have an answer. There's a lot of things. I mean, Gary Neville is getting a lot of stick talking about the Glazers. And of course, we all know the Glazers are a massive factor. I mean, Newcastle fans, as you well know, the difference a bad owner and a good owner can make. Look at the upturn in form since the Saudis have taken over Newcastle. It makes a massive difference. But at the same time, the Glazers aren't playing centre-back for Man United. They're not playing up front. They're not on the sideline. They're not on the training pitch 5 days a week, whatever it is. So the players have got to take responsibility. And, I mean, the most worrying thing I've heard so far from Ten Hag came this week when he made his comments that he doesn't think United will ever play the football that he had at Ajax. And that's worrying from a manager who spent over £400 million in just over a year at the club.
I wanted to ask you that. Because I spoke to Julio about this, funnily enough, last night with the podcast we do every Monday. And those comments were brought up because me personally, I find that insulting. As a fan, I don't know what Pete and Daz would think if Eddie Howe said we're not going to play how he wants to play, we're going to play something totally different, considering what you said you were going to do, getting into the job. If a manager's saying he's not going to play the style that actually convinced the club to give him the job, why are you here in the first place? You know what I mean? Like, it feels kind of offensive to me in that sense. Like, obviously I want Ten Hag to succeed, but if he's not going to play the style he wants, why are you here? You know?
Yeah, well, this is the argument I was making, is that if we're bringing in a manager like Ten Hag to play a certain style of football that's going to bring long-term success, and he's not going to play that style of football, then why not just have Neil Warnock in charge? Why not bring Steve Bruce in? Like, there's no advantage of having such a talented footballing manager if he's just going to throw down tools and say, well, these are the players I have to work with. We're just going to play direct football. I mean, United have never played direct football. They've always been renowned for winning, but winning playing a certain style. And I mean, I'm a massive fan of Ten Hag. I am not Ten Hag out. I think he should be given time. I think he deserves to get at least until the end of the season, regardless of where we finish.
Yeah. I think the fact he said Ten Hag, I had nothing to do with that. By the way, I don't know what happened. He's been kicked straight out of the StreamYard. I think I don't know if he's.
The Glazers are listening.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not. Julio, whilst I'm waiting on Jonathan coming back, just like what's your overall thoughts as well? Like I swear, I had nothing to do with that.
I always knew you were corrupt, Reece. I always knew you were corrupt.
Here. I'm corrupt enough to paint my face. I'm not corrupt enough to kick someone out of my StreamYard. Like I have some level of decorum.
That's fair enough. Listen, it's a bit of a shame me sitting here with the shades on, but I've got nothing to be smug about in any way, given what's going on at United. I think what I will say first is I just want to touch on Newcastle briefly because, like,
by all means, on you go.
What's been refreshing about Newcastle is the recruitment has been somewhat methodical in the sense of they've not allowed themselves to get fleeced for players. Like when City first got the money, for example, we saw them splash big money, and a lot of the signings within the first year or so under Mark Hughes was almost like, let's make a best 11 out of the top 4 with the likes of Shane Given, Wayne Bridge, Craig Bellamy, obviously Tevez and Adebayor, Kolo Touré came in, Santa Cruz. But Newcastle, I thought they were going to do something like that. I thought we were going to see a midfield of Calvin Phillips and Ward Prowse at one point when the money first came in. But they haven't. Like, I didn't criticize them like maybe other fans did in the January when they spent a lot of money on players, because every club when they're in a relegation battle spends money to stay up. I think some of the signings then were good, and it's been a constant theme since. And I think the other key thing is obviously it's really refreshing to see a coach come into a side and rather than write off the players he doesn't like instantly, he's coached them. Now, Atlanta United, for example, on my MLS team, and seeing Almiron do bits it warms my heart a little bit. And obviously, it's not great that it's at Newcastle, but it's a bit. I've got a bit of a soft spot for Almiron, and but what he's done tomorrow. Pardon?
You might see him tomorrow, Julio.
Yeah. I have been a victim of that on this podcast before. I said Mitrovic hadn't scored in the FA Cup, I think, and then he scored the very next day at Old Trafford last year. So
that's what happens when you open your mouth, mate.
Yeah, but also what Hal's done to the likes of like Longstaff, Joel Linton, as well as Almiron, I think it's really good, and I think it's very testament to a guy who obviously left Bournemouth, spent a year and a bit out, almost did his internships elsewhere, went different places, almost learned some new things. And what he's brought into that Newcastle team, obviously the soul was always there, regardless of the fact that, obviously we mentioned style of play and, Pete and Daz, you literally saw Steve Bruce come out and say, I've not been able to play my way for the last year, but now I'm going to start playing my way in a press conference. So
you said a lot of things.
Comments. I think you kind of
not gonna lie, that was a funny comment, to be fair, when it was clipped on YouTube.
You kind of know what it's like to hear your manager say that, but it's testament that Howe's come in and he's added bite to this team and a lot. It's very exciting, and with the soul and obviously the financial backing as well. Looking at it objectively as a neutral, it's exciting. Now, being a United fan, being in direct competition for top 4 places because we're nowhere near winning leagues yet. I was of the opinion that the comments that Ten Hag made didn't worry me, because what I read between the lines was pretty much similar to what I thought Conte was saying at Spurs last year, which is you can't expect me to win with some of these players. Like if Conte turned around and said last season, you can't expect me to win with Davinson Sanchez and Eric Dyer playing every week. I don't think that would have surprised any of us. And I think that Ten Hag's kind of saying that now, because whilst people like to bring up, obviously, 14 signings, it's his team. Half of them were loans. most of those loans aren't here anymore. They were short term, and then you can question the recruitment of some of the other players, like whether it's getting the band back together or like in terms of players who have played under him or had some kind of experience in that kind of football. But unlike what happened at Arsenal under Arteta, not enough players are leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Every summer that Arteta was there for 2 years, 4 or 5 first team names left. We haven't had that.
That's right. Yeah.
The only time we've had like 5 first team names leave realistically was the first summer Ten Hag came in, and that was the whole like, you know, Cavani, Mata, Matic, Lingard, Pogba. Their contracts had run out, and I don't think Ten Hag was going to try and convince any of them to stay if this was going to be a new age. Whereas that summer, the money we made was based off like Pereira, Chong. There was another name that's gone out of my head, James Garner. You know, not first team names that need to go. We thought we were going to get that this summer, but when you see Fred leave and maybe McTominay stay, you can see that, and Elanga go for little money. You can kind of see that players are going, but United are accepting transfer bids as they come in, because there's like, let's see how many we can get out the door, because it's been a case of we need to sell to buy.
It's scattergun.
So it's ridiculous. And I think that because not enough are leaving, not enough is coming in for Ten Hag to work with, because some of these players aren't good enough to play what Ten Hag used to do at Ajax. And I think that credit to, for example, the likes of McTominay, Maguire, they've come up in their moments, but that's literally what we've been all season, moments. And I've said it before that right now we're in a chasm between how we've been playing for the last 10 years and how Ten Hag probably wants us to play in the future. Yeah. There will definitely be an element, I think, of what he did at Ajax that he'd want in this United team, but I just don't think he has the personnel to do that. And even if he does, some of them are still adapting to it, and others are just not available to play. You know, I'm looking forward to when the likes of Kobe Mainoo, Amad Diallo come back from their respective injuries, because I'm really intrigued to see what some of these players can do given the time to play. Because, you know, we've got 150, 160, 70 million pounds worth of right wingers right now who either not doing anything on the pitch or they're not on the pitch for different reasons. So it's a case of, it's just ridiculous, obviously, how much is almost unavailable to us. But I just think that you need to judge a manager based on what he's achieved within 18 months, 2 years. Now we're reaching the 18 months point, and I think that we could finish 7th or 8th this season, but our style of play will have significantly improved. And at the end of the season, you might have seen an improvement. And that's what, obviously, because 18 months, because Arteta was quite pragmatic in his first like 6 or 7 months, won him a trophy, and then his first full season, he tried to integrate what he wanted. Granted, they finished 8th. And at the end of that season, when they got knocked out of the Europa League, everyone knew that if it didn't shore up in the next 6 months, he was going to be gone. He would have been gone by Christmas. But we saw 150 million pounds worth of investment in players that fit directly what he wanted, as well as saw players leave that weren't good enough, the likes of Mustafi, Kolasinac, David Luiz, and they were coming into a side that already had a philosophy in play almost. It doesn't look like we've got that at the moment. It still looks like it's still being integrated a little bit. So I think that with United at the moment, a lot of things need to fall into place. But I think that also the players aren't pulling their weight on the pitch. Like, you forget for a moment everything I've just said, right? You could sack the manager tomorrow. It's not going to change, because we've seen these players do the same things under Jose and Oli, and I didn't like what I saw then. You know, these are overinflated egos, overpaid players, where in cases yesterday, for example, a player will get ran past by a City player and he'll be like, oh, he's gotten past me. Shit, innit?
That's true. I agree. And that's the telling point. And there's a comment, obviously, that I do have that I'm going to bring up in very shortly. It's not in the live chat. It's actually something that's in my head that I will say in a minute. But I do have a question, obviously, for the Newcastle lads. And this is something that I was going to bring up, and it is very reflective of situation about how it can come across. We are going to come to that. Alex made a fair comment in his opinion. He's saying Rashford needs bench time. I'll come back to that shortly. I'll get Jonathan's point of view on that one. But this is the comment I wanted to bring up just for the Newcastle lads. Now, I have my opinion on this. And all I'm going to say is I'm just lucky Newcastle's Twitter hasn't come after me for this one. But my exact tweet was AC Milan have had the last laugh. They have.
They are cackling down that phone. Newcastle probably got them on the phone like, did you know about this? And they're just hearing laughter. That's all they're hearing at the moment.
It's generally the sense of it, like they whether they knew what was going to come from it in terms of like situation, they got what they wanted anyway. Newcastle got a player they really wanted. Milan got money and they went and spent it. But in circumstance though, it's a player's well-being, obviously gambling. If you want to gamble, that's fine. If you want to put bets on, that's up to you. Gamble responsibly. I think some people take that way beyond the extreme. It's a horrible addiction as well. It gets you into so much bother, especially if you're a high earning job. Football, even like people play it, but people do take football very seriously, especially for financial investments. Tonali's another one. Good lad as well. But it's the circumstance as well where he is going to get that ban and it's heavy for him. And you see the difference in contrast. So the difference of like how Tonali's got his ban compared to... Sorry, Tonali's situation in contrast to Ivan Toney. One's got a big, massive ban, but we're going to try and help him. The other one's almost been forgotten. But it's when it comes back how we're going to differ. So I just wanted to get your opinion on Tonali and also, again, the same point is, do you think Milan knew? And just your genuine opinion on that one. I'll go to you first on that, Daz.
Yeah. Okay. So we you can imagine we did a few shows about this. We did at least an hour and a half ranting show, or me being on the negative and Pete being on the positive side of things. And then last week we talked about this topic as well with True Geordie. Yeah. So did AC Milan allegedly know about the betting issue, and there's something going to pop up? My own opinion is they could well have, that's why they let their star player, their boyhood AC Milan fan, loved by the fans, still is loved by the fans. They sang his name as well as us when we played them. So they could have potentially known something, but we'll if there's some kind of details out there in paperwork somewhere, or some kind of digital record of do we have a case? We'll find out in the next couple of weeks or months. I'm sure that there'll be some kind of investigation into it. But then how Newcastle approached it, and it's like the arm around the shoulder and show the love for Tonali. He came out with and saying he had a gambling addiction. The message came out via his agent, as you would have heard, and he was the fans sang his name and are right behind him and wanting to get him back as quick as possible. Obviously, it's going to be 10 months. It's going to be the start of about September, end of the next season will have started before he returns to us. Then there's like, can he train with us as well? I think he can, but he obviously can't play any games. So it's and he also has to do some counselling and some things over in Italy as well, just as part of that ban. But then in contrast, as you said, to Ivan Toney, he's kind of in a way kind of thrown under the bus. But I don't have that much details about the Ivan Toney thing. But yeah, it was kind of an opposite approach that was taken at Brentford with Toney. But it's all the talk of Toney is that when he comes back, he's going to leave. He's going to go to a club in London. So I don't know as well. So it's they know he's probably not going to hang around for long. And I know when Pete will get into this topic as well, but Pete made the call to that when Tonali does come back, that we should extend his contract. Give us that year extra that he's going to be missing for this season on to show we've shown the commitment to him. He should show the commitment back to us. And I think after what he's seen from Newcastle and what he's experienced to date, he's going to once he comes back the same player, he's going to want to do that. And he's seen the love, and So yeah, it's all positive from that sense. But yeah, we are down a midfielder, and we are stuck with that problem for the rest of the season.
I appreciate that. I was going to get you to elaborate on the questions about what he can do, but Lisa's already confirmed in the chat. So thanks very much. And ain't going to happen. Say it now. Ain't going to happen.
A man can dream.
Pete, on your sense for though, right, regarding the Tonali situation, just like your overall thoughts on it, and just like the Milan situation as well. Like, do you think they knew, and also like, do you think the players have also responded the right way as well, considering the fact that when you look at key players, he is one of them. But it looks like players have actually stepped up as well in his absence. So like Longstaff as well, he's stepped up. Like, it seems that they are continuously showing the commitment more than just the individual.
Yeah, I mean, look, you asked the question initially. Did AC Milan know? I don't think we'll ever know. We'll never know that. I think Newcastle are actually investigating that at the moment. They're trying to, with their lawyers, get to the bottom of whether they were involved. And I think if they were involved and they did know, I think we'll find out very soon. If it gets into December, January, February time, and there's still no update on that, I would take that as they didn't know, because we can't find the evidence for that. So, they've lost their best player, their homegrown boy, to Newcastle. So even if they did know about it, they've still lost out, because they've sold a player for £50 million and actually got worse on the back of that. So, who's benefited really? But look, it's a disappointing situation. We're gutted to lose Tonali. But I've maintained it, and I said it on Loaded, and I'll say it again. I think Newcastle United fans would have been absolutely distraught had it been Sven Botman, had it been Bruno Guimaraes, had it been Alexander Isak. I think Newcastle fans, although we're disappointed, are not as disappointed, and the reason being is because we've got those players that can come and step in and still be match winners. Sandro Tonali will be a fantastic player for Newcastle United. There's no doubt about it. He is a super talented player. And we just started to see little glimmers of that just before the international break, when all of this kind of came about. But he wasn't quite there yet. And we were still picking up points without him playing at his absolute best. So therefore, we got Champions League football without him. We've got almost a midfield that's the same as what we did in terms of getting Champions League football now without him until next season. And so therefore it's not the worst thing in the world. It's not ideal for the manager, because we spent a lot of money on him, but it's not the worst thing in the world. And the great thing about it, and we're going to be talking about this tonight on our channel, is we have a transfer window in just a few months' time. And so I am absolutely convinced that we are going into the transfer window and we are going to get a replacement, whether it's for 6 months, whether it's a loan with a view to buy, or something along those lines, to pick up, to take the mantle from January to the end of the season. And that's what I'm convinced about. Now, with Sandro Tonali, I always see this as a long term, and I have maintained it. We're losing him until August the 24th, I think it is, 2024, next year. So maybe even the first game or two of the new season. That's fine, okay? But he signed a long-term contract. And as Dad mentioned, I mentioned it on a show that we did a couple of weeks ago, where I said, the one thing I want from Sandro Tonali to show his commitment, it's the same way that we've showed him the commitment and backed him with all of this situation with the addiction and all the difficulties that he's had, is he should be extending his contract. And he should be extending his contract at least a year, the year that we've lost him for, to show his commitment back to us. And that way, I think Newcastle fans will be okay with that. But we're going to see the best of Sandro Tonali. He's 23 years old. He's not 28, 29, coming towards the end of his career in key moments. He's not even his prime yet. And he will be a captain for Italy. And I genuinely believe in his time at Newcastle, he will be a leader for Newcastle United. There's no doubt about it. So, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's not ideal. I think opposition fans have enjoyed it probably more than anything else. They've got a little bit of a kick out of it, because let's be honest, there hasn't really been anything in the last 18 months to 2 years to really kick Newcastle United with, because things have been all kind of plain sailing. But this has given opposition fans the opportunity to kind of to kind of give us a little kick and have a little bit of a laugh at our expense, and that's absolutely fine. But Newcastle fans, we will keep chugging along and trying to win matches and trying to compete at the highest level, because that's what we're all about now, ultimately.
Just add one thing onto what Pete said there. The other thing is that what we've seen as well, that players coming into a Newcastle squad, it takes some adjusting, and he's coming from another country. He's going to be learning English, and so I think a year, as long as he's allowed to train in the background, he's going to hit the ground running at the start next season.
Yeah,
so he'll be a frightening proposition, I think, next season.
I mean, I watched him regularly play for AC Milan, and it's just incredible to watch. Like his discipline is more than anything else. Like besides technical ability and work rate, it's just his discipline. So I think it says all. And the fact he openly came out and admitted himself that he has an addiction, like, just says all that he wants help. He admits that he's wasted all that money betting and all that. And I reiterate what I said 10, 15 minutes ago, and I reiterate again: if you are going to bet, that's fine. I don't. But if you do want to gamble and spend a bit of money and do all that, just do it responsibly. Or if you are going to bet, have someone with you, someone that can actually just sit there and go, maybe that's just a bit too much. Like, just refrain it a little bit. I think there's that little thing where he's just been, because he's young, that little bit naivety of a young adult. He's just went and blew it, and he's got.
The thing about it is, Reece, is that in Italy their laws are different, so you can't even bet. You can't even do any type of betting in that country because their laws are really, really strict over there. So that's true. That's the moment. But the one thing I'll add to that is that Sandro Tonali openly spoke about, just before the AC Milan game, that he's found it really difficult to adjust. He really found it difficult to kind of adjust to life in England, moving to a new country, the language barrier, because he doesn't speak English at all, and he's learning. Say that this could be the perfect transition for him, is that he's now in a position where he can learn English over the next 10 months. He can adjust himself to England and Newcastle more particularly, and get himself really kind of honed in on those things, because he's got a lot more time on his hands. He won't be doing all the travelling that the players are doing. So when he does come back in August, not only is he fit and ready, because as Lisa put in the chat quite rightly, he is available to play friendly. So pre-season he can be involved. So he'll be, as soon as this season's done, he'll feel like he's back. Ultimately, he'll feel like he's back right into it, and he can start playing. And at that point, he can hit the ground running. He can be firing and ready to go, but also be able to understand the tactics, understand the language, understand the kind of the intricacies around playing for a top level team. Because you understand the language barrier, so that's more of the positive slant to it.
I agree with that. I agree with that, and I wanted to say as well, because I'm going to ask him, because I know Jonathan obviously in terms of mental health is very forward thinking on that. Obviously, it's something that he's passionate about. So I want to get Jonathan's opinion on that in a second. But I just wanted to say this as well, and this is another thing that I like about Tonali, about his work ethic. He's missing out on the most important thing: a chance to defend the European Championships next summer. That extra motivation of missing out on the biggest European tournament from an international perspective, he's missing that out. That will hopefully for him add that extra feel for his own personal game as well. But Jonathan, just before we come on to talk about pressure of Ten Hag in the Carabao Cup and then getting rinsed in this combined 11, just in general, what's your perspective about the Tonali ban, and also the mental health side of it, obviously the gambling addiction? I just want to get your opinion on that, if you don't mind.
I think it's an easy one for opposition fans to hop on, because obviously Newcastle in some ways, in some people's eyes, are the new Man City in the league. They've got a lot of money behind them now. They bought a big name player in the summer like Tonali, who wouldn't have traditionally moved to Newcastle a couple of years ago. But what people forget in all this is that that's a young man. It's a 23-year-old man with parents. I don't know if he's siblings or whatever like that. And I seen similar last November when Jadon Sancho was pulled out of Man United squad to reassess himself and kind of needed some time, and the media were plaguing Ten Hag every press conference what was wrong with him. And I think we look at these people as commodities because they're on such big money. There's huge transfer fees involved. But I mean, I think of myself at 23 years of age, and I couldn't have dreamed of moving to Newcastle on my own to start work and living in a different country. And I live in Ireland and I speak fluent English. And I mean, I couldn't imagine what it's like for a young man, 23 years of age, moving from Milan, which is a beautiful place, a lovely warm country, lived there all his life with his family, speaking fluent Italian. And I mean, there's some people in Newcastle who speak English, but I mean, even I'd struggle to understand them at times, depending on how strong the Geordie accent is. I mean, so it's a massive culture shock. And I mean, it's bad enough that this young man's life now is taking a massive hit with this ban. Look, it's a punishment. The laws are there; they have to be obeyed. They're in the contracts, and footballers they're rightly punished. But I mean, you do have got to look at the human side of this. And I mean, like, I'm sure Newcastle will give him the support that he needs, just like United did with Jadon Sancho. And it's just nice to see football clubs are moving to a direction now where I know players are still looked at as commodities, but it's massively important that you remember these are people as well, and that like we don't push these players to a point where they think there's no return and we wake up some morning to some absolutely awful news, and you know, at that point it's too late. So look, I mean, from the human point of view, I hope he gets the help he needs and comes out with the right side. And look, he's a massive asset to the Premier League. I think I've signed him on every Football Manager save I've ever had. So the kid is quality. So look, I'm looking forward to seeing him coming back.
Yeah, same. And I'm gonna stick with you anyway. Just if you're a Man United fan as well, watching this, the under 21s are playing Salford City in the EFL Cup. And we've just scored. So I wonder which side Gary Neville will be on tonight, just for my own personal point of view. So Hell is also saying a very valid point, saying get the betting companies off the shirts. Yes or no to that, boys?
Yes. Makes sense.
Yeah.
All agree on that one. Jonathan, I'm going to stick with you and I'll come back to Goose later on. We'll see what Goose thinks. But Ten Hag in a crisis. And also, do you think he's under more pressure now than perhaps he could have been? What do you think?
Yeah, I was kind of touched on the point before my Wi-Fi connection went down there. I was cut off.
Yeah, that's why I'm bringing it back to you.
No, I think there is an element of pressure he's under. Of course he is, but unlike previous managers like Ollie and Jose at a point, I don't think he's under the immediate pressure that a lot of people outside the club might think. Fans looking from the outside in, I think United are such a reactive club to social media that they'll look at what the fans are saying on Twitter and they'll make a decision based on that. And from what I can see, 99% of the fans are still behind Ten Hag. But like I was touching on, I don't think comments like what came out on Sunday will help him. I mean, the United fans that are behind him would like to think that there is some sort of long-term project, long-term style of football in the pipeline that they're working on. And then when you hear him coming out saying that isn't actually the case, I'm just working with the players at my disposal, it's a little bit concerning. There is pressure on, there's no doubt, and you can tell, and that's probably one of the reasons why he's gone for this pragmatic approach to kind of prioritize results over performances. But I think he's got to change. It's not sustainable because, as we all touched on there, it's moments FC at the minute. You know, we're picking goals out here, there. We're not actually getting goals from styles of play, like things we're working on and set pieces, stuff like that. It's just moments in games, and that's not sustainable. Not in the Premier League anymore. 15, 20 years ago, Man United would have got away with that. There's way too many top quality teams in the Premier League to get away with that. And look, I think he's going to have to adapt. He's going to have to adapt to a style of football that's more long-term oriented, start playing the way he wants to play. And that will take a massive amount of pressure off his shoulders. Because like Julio touched on a few times in relation to Arteta went through a horrid time with Arsenal a few years ago. I don't know how he stayed in the job. But the powers that be at Arsenal saw what he was trying to do and look at them now. They're reaping the rewards. I know they didn't win the league last year, but they're very close. And don't be surprised if they finally get over the line, deservedly so, this season.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that, to be fair. And it has been a long time coming for them. I think at some point you would expect Arsenal at some point to win the Premier League, but the way they are playing, they are playing some fantastic football. It's not hard to notice that, but I think the one thing that's a difference though is even though they were playing particularly shite football, you could still see glimpses of it at least during that half season. But at least he stuck to the style of playing, even if it took too long. I just don't like the fact that Ten Hag just completely wiped his off. I'm like, if you come into a club and you've immediately sacked off your style, for me, you've already failed. Like, you've already failed if you sack off what brought you to the dance. I don't want to see him fail. I want to see his style actually come across. If he decides that's not what I want, he's compromised, and I think that sets the tone for, again, what you're looking for. Julio crisis, obviously. What do you think? And also, they're saying Top Gun, so don't go for 3 hours. Just kidding. But like, what do you think about like a crisis in general and Ten Hag under pressure? And also, do you think if he was at least to make some change to the squad, it might help him to a degree? What do you think?
Yeah, I think, listen, when you go from Ajax to Manchester United, you're obviously going to be under all kinds of pressure. I think that in a similar time under Solskjaer's second full season, we'd lost 6-1 to Spurs and went through a horrible spell where we either won a game or we lost. Do you know what I mean? We beat Everton 3-1 at Goodison Park off the back of a 2-1 defeat away in Istanbul, which was almost humiliating. We got knocked out of the Champions League and people said Ollie needs to go now. The fact remains, the pressure seems to be mounting a lot quicker for every manager that comes in the door. After David Moyes left, it just seems every manager gets questioned a lot sooner than the previous one does. You know, there needs to be wholesale changes in the football club, but I think there is something going about today on Twitter that, so don't take it with a pinch of salt, if you will, but like, apparently Ten Hag likes to adapt philosophies based on the culture of different football clubs he's at. I don't know as of yet how true that is. It is a very intriguing thing to come out from people. Now, whether it's any credible source, I could not tell you. I don't remember who or what I read it from. But I think that we're all in agreement that he needs time. Now, I think what's ridiculous is people are almost suggesting that you can't criticize him without wanting him in the job. He's not. We know he's not exempt from criticism, right? He's had his downfall at certain points, like the lack of squad utilization as opposed to rotation last year, for example. That doesn't necessarily mean we're Ten Hag out. It just means that, you know, there are things he needs to do, and there has been questionable recruitment in the summer. You know, obviously that part of it comes down to sell to buy and all that. You know, like there's the whole we brought in a young, inexperienced striker when there was a very experienced striker available, and deadly strikers seem harder and harder to come by every year, if I'm being perfectly honest. Like the other strikers of that kind of young age were either obscene amounts of money or hadn't proven much yet. Like Kolo Muani was a suggestion people kept saying, but he's not convincing enough for the £80 million he was going to cost. So I think that whilst the recruitment is questionable, I think Ten Hag is asking for a lot, and I don't think he's getting a lot delivered to him in terms of recruitment. I think he wanted an experienced striker and a young striker to almost be an understudy, which at with any competent football club with any competent board would have provided him with that, but he hasn't got that above him. And I think in some cases he might need saving from himself because he's been given all the power, which you can have your suggestions, you can have your idea, but I think also that you need people to turn around and say no. Now, granted, we've seen that before at this football club. You know, Jose wanted Alderweireld and Maguire, and he was told no. But if at the time Champions League 3-peat and World Cup winner Varane was available for 100 million, they'd go and slash the cash for him. So the money was no object. It just depended who they were spending it on. That's not to say I want to go back to that. There needs to be a balance, and we don't have that balance at the moment, and we haven't had that balance. Now, under Sir Alex, we had that. That director of football role was almost done partly by Sir Alex, and the other responsibilities were done by David Gill. And we haven't got that at the moment, and we're in desperate need of one. So it's just there's a lot of different, like I said earlier, there's a lot of different things that's causing issues. Ten Hag is obviously under pressure. You know, like I'm always going to say I'm Ten Hag in until it's right to go. I was like this with Solskjaer, with Mourinho, with Louis. I actually wanted Louis to stay another year. That's my own personal like bias towards Louis himself. But if Ten Hag went and lost the next 10 games 6-0, then I think questions would start needing to be asked a little bit. So it's not going so well at the moment, but I think it's one of those where it's short-term pain, long-term gain. And I just hope that the people above him, whether it be right at the top with the ownership and whatever that structure is going to come now, or whoever's actually in the boardroom around the table, if they're the right people, whether it's who's currently there or if anyone comes in, they make almost the right choice in giving the time, because I think he's earned it. So I'll be interested to see how he sets up for tomorrow, albeit regardless of the fact it's a cup game, it's Newcastle United. It wouldn't surprise me Newcastle went full strength. And I'd be interested to see if Ten Hag decides I'm going to go with my favourites or I'm going to change it up completely, which is needed. And it's going to be an interesting couple of months. I think we're going to get to January. We're going to wait for players to come back from injury. And then I think it will be properly assessed, if you get what I mean.
That's a fair analysis. From an outside perspective, obviously we'll be coming to like score predictions very shortly and all that, and that's going to be hilarious. I'm just going to ask you guys about another player in general, but I'll come to that in a minute. But just Daz or Pete, either or, just looking outside and obviously like just genuine your thoughts on like Ten Hag at the moment at Man United, and obviously your opinion on that. And do you think he has the capability to turn it around himself, or do you think he is maybe fooling himself a little bit and thinking that he can turn it around? Just want to get your opinion on that as well from an outside perspective.
Go, Pete.
Erik Ten Hag. For me personally, I think he's a talented coach. I do think he's a talented coach. But as I said to a Man U fan the other day, yesterday in fact, there's only so long you can be in a job that you're getting hammered week after week after week, whether it's by the fans, whether it's by the media, whether it's results, where that shine that he had when he first came in and everything was great and glorious, and he had this ideology of way of playing football that was going to change the way Man United played. There's only so long that can hold before the shine starts getting wiped away. And it's the same with any manager. Is that little glistening like end to the manager that you like and you want? You had the same with Jose Mourinho. You had it to a point, although lesser ability with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer because he was an ex-player. What I'm seeing in Erik Ten Hag is that glistening just starting to disappear, that shine starting to disappear. And when that disappears, two things will happen. One, the Man United fans won't look at him in the same way. And two, he won't look at the job in the same way. And he will start to think, if this continues, this is having a detrimental effect on my reputation.
Yeah, I agree with that.
He has to start then thinking about himself. It's okay saying, I'm going to continue to fight, I'm going to continue to battle on and do this. But unless something drastically changes at the club, he will be in a position where he's not looked at in the same light, and he won't look at the club in the same light, and will want to naturally get out. So I think I think it's okay to say he's going to stick it out. He needs time. Time moves very, very quickly in football.
I agree. It does,
time isn't a long time. You could get to the end of November, and if you're continuing to lose matches, the door gets opened and he's at the door, or he asks to leave and it's a mutual agreement. So for me, that's where I am with Erik Ten Hag. And I've got to be honest, you guys have just talked about it. You talked about, his style of football and the way he wants to play. The fact that he mentioned that, he's not yet kind of put his style of play on this team, or I think you've mentioned just a minute ago, about the fact that he said that he changes his style based on the culture of the club. It makes no sense. That makes no sense whatsoever.
I agree with you.
It doesn't. And that says to me that that's somebody that already sounds like he's defeated.
That's when I said, me personally, I felt offended. I personally felt offended by the comment because it
That
just
sounds
screams
like something. It sounds like something Steve Bruce would say. That comment really does. I'm giving Steve Bruce too much credit there in saying that, but
no, naturally. I know the gents. Obviously, they've got a show coming up at 8:00. Go and check them out. So before we do that, score predictions. We're going to go all around. So this is going to be fun. I'm just going to go right off the bat. I'm just going to say 1-1 Man United win on penalties because I'm not confident over 90 minutes. There you go. 1-1. We win on penalties, but we'll probably get battered throughout the whole game in terms of I think Newcastle just have the control. I think Newcastle will probably score first, and I think we will equalise. And I think it's just a matter of I think we'll just take that little bit of confidence at the penalties. But then again, though, I've just said penalties, and Man United don't know what a penalty shootout is because we never seem to win them. So I'm actually giving us a bit of glimmer and hope there. But we'll see what happens. Keane's going 1-0, Garnacho to score the winner, and Lisa's going 2-1 Newcastle. Jonathan, your score predictions for tomorrow? What are you thinking?
I think 3-1 Newcastle. I just think their movement and directness are going to cause a lot of problems tomorrow. I think it'll be an easy win for Newcastle, unfortunately.
Yeah, he's taken out my head. I was just being honest. he's being extreme honest. I'm just being glimmer of hope. But no, to be fair, I wouldn't disagree on right now current form. I wouldn't disagree with that. Daz, yourself?
I'm going to go 1-2. Newcastle win. Wilson and Gordon to score. It's going to be interesting to see what team Eddie Howe plays because we are so stretched now, and we're going to have to play the same team more or less in the game against Arsenal. So it's and then after that Dortmund. So we've got massive games coming up. But I think he's going to play his strongest team. Might rest Trippier though.
Yeah, but when you look at misses, that's not the first miss I'm hoping for. I'm looking for Bruno Guimaraes to be missed, or Isak to be missed, or Harvey Barnes.
Well, he's injured, and Harvey Barnes is injured.
even better. Once he can sign for Scotland as an injured player, that's all right. Well, he can play as an injured player. I'm okay with that. Julio, yourself?
2-1.
To who?
I haven't figured it out yet.
Can you figure it out before we finish?
If it's a United win, it's because big names have come off the bench and Newcastle have taken their big names off the pitch. So it's going to be a late one.
Fair enough. He's sitting on the fence. And Pete, yourself?
I think there's going to be goals in this game. I'm going to go 3-2 to Newcastle. I'm still not sure of our lineup. I know we haven't got many players to choose from, but I do think a couple of big players will be saved on the bench to come on and affect it late on. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I think Bruno Guimaraes will start. I'm not quite sure on Callum Wilson. I think Callum Wilson may start on the bench. I've got a feeling that Anthony Gordon's going to start up front.
He's been excellent for you.
Yeah, I think there's going to be goals in this game. I want to win it. I've said it before. I want to win this game.
Yeah.
I want to get to the quarterfinals. So we'll see. Really interesting one.
We wouldn't have to play you in the final. It's a bonus.
And get beat. I mean, to be fair, you've done that in the late 90s. You got to 2 cup finals back to back, and you lost both by the same scoreline. So that it could happen. It could happen this season. You never know.
Thanks for
on that one,
cheers for that.
Absolutely. And I'm going to say this one I appreciate. Thank you very much, Lisa. I appreciate that. She's great. So she's off to Loaded, where obviously the lads are going. So if you are doing that, obviously, just a quick shout out, obviously. Loaded Mag in UFC, that's where you can find Daz and Pete. Go and check out there. Jonathan, you can find here on the weekly. Sorry, my own channel there. My apologies. Devil's Advocate. And Julio, you can find him on Twitter.
Floating around.
That's not what I'm thinking. But other than that, it's been a great show. Thanks very much, lads. We really do appreciate it. And
Reece, can I just interrupt you? Just tomorrow
you can.
night at 8 o'clock, we're doing a live watch along, a dual watch along. So we've got you guys coming. I think we've got Keane coming, got Dan,
Nice.
the Man United fan as well, another Man United fan, and us another. So dual watch along. So tune in for that.
There you go.
It'll be a bit of crack.
Well, there you go then. There's another one for you for tomorrow. I do watch along. Get on there and enjoy it. But apart from that, from us, thanks very much. Have a good night, folks. And United, just don't get battered tomorrow if you lose. Just don't get battered. But we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully we win. Bye, guys. See you
Cheers,
later.
lads. Thanks, everyone.